kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Kids, welcome back. Happy Thursday. So, moving right along here in the boat shop, trying to get some of these boat builds done so we can go out there and enjoy some weather and maybe do some maidens and some running. So, it is the morning, so I'm a little bit mellower. But anyway, so we're going to start the hardware of the rigger. I did manage to get it painted and cleared, sealed, and I even made myself a custom little boat rack. Isn't that cute? Yeah. So there is, it's actually a little crooked. That's okay. This is just on top of the toolbox. This is just a piece of plank. I 3D printed some rack mounts. Hang on a minute. I 3D printed some rack mounts so we can, I just epoxied these to the board. And then this one's crooked. That's okay. I obviously didn't look down on it when I did it. But again, I'll put some felt on the bottom of this just so it has some stiction. And then then I just shot it with clear coat, automotive clear. Same time that I cleared something else, I don't remember. But that's automotive clear, and so it's nice and waterproof if you want to bring it down to the lake with you to hold it. I'm going to take some of this banding. This is just foam. I love this stuff. 1/4 inch wide sticky foam that I use for hatches and things like that on boats. I'm going to need to get some more of this. And I'm going to line it right here so it doesn't get all scraped up and gross. And then I will reveal the boat. I'll be right back. There we go. So we put a little bit of padding in here. Just keep it from scraping up the boat when we put it on here. This PLA that I printed these out of isn't the best. It's just wood PLA. Again, this is a stand. It's not a gas boat where I'm going to be rigging on it really hard and stuff like that, so no big thing. It's going to help us in our building process. So let's see the boat. Hang on. Alright, here is the finished product. There we go. So, there's our rigger that we built. So I went pretty basic with the decals. 2023, made it a Tonka truck. Why not? Kind of cool. JJ Roto Geek, obviously. My number 42. Our hatch. Everything's been. I primed, single stage primer, the sponsons, and the sponsons take a bit of a beating. So I primed those, and I also primed the hatch, and then we painted it single stage paint. Automotive cleared the whole thing. Now, for those of you guys that don't want to piss around with automotive clear coat all the time, for an electric boat, you don't have to use 2-stage clear or 2K because it doesn't need to be fuel proof. You're not running a gas engine. I did 3D print my own nose pieces. Turned out pretty good. They're hollow inside, so they're pretty light, about as light as the wood ones would be. And then R4FE, not too terribly bad. And if you'll remember, when I put in my doubler in the transom, I screwed up and I put it on the inside instead of the outside. So I did 3D print a plate, so now it's a triple thick transom, but that's okay. So that's the same orange as the nose pieces are, so kind of going with a theme there, I guess. And that foam, you see, now my boat's staying there pretty tight, which is cool. That's kind of what I wanted. We can push that down even farther, actually. And once it gets a little bit warmer, believe it or not, it will stretch, and it'll be a little bit more loose, and that's okay. So, what we're going to do, nothing's permanently affixed yet. So we're going to take our sponsons off, because it's just going to make life easier if we don't have to go around these. I actually turned out pretty good. I got it. This is tape right here from when I painted. I just haven't cleaned it up, gotten the tape off yet. We'll take out our booms. Carbon. Uncle Joe corrected me on that. Okay. There's our little rigger. Alright. And I did throw a little bit of tape in here because when I clear coated this, I just left it open. Even though it was already sealed on the inside really, really well, there's no point in stuffing it with newspaper and all that crap. Might as well have a little bit of extra sealer on there. So we'll have to get all this stuff off. Again, as you guys know, those of you that know me, I don't care what the inside looks like usually. I should. You put that much work into a boat, you should make it nice and pretty, I guess, but can't be bothered. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to mount our strut back on. Now, with these struts, you have a lock nut, and we're not going to set it up just yet. We're just going to get the hardware on. Okay? Then, like you guys have heard me say before a million times, I Loctite the shit out of everything. I have had these become loose. All we're doing here is screwing it right into there. I gotta get that little nub off there. Okay. And then we got our blind nuts in there to put in. I have built riggers many times without using the blind nuts and just used washers, Loctite, and a nut. Perfectly fine if you don't want to mess with that. Just make sure you use a washer though. You need that support in there. Okay. The important thing about the strut, there's just 2 Phillips screws. So we're going to make it. And we'll do the alignment of this later. I just want to get all my hardware on. Okay. But I didn't tighten it up. Just want to make sure everything fits as it should. Make sure she's level. Won't break the bank if it's not. Let me grab a different screwdriver here. I swear I clean the shop 3 times a week. Okay. So a little bit more beef. That thread lock's going to keep us from vibrating out. Okay. A little bit of WD-40. Put it right on here. Now what I like to do with these is I like to put the nut on the side where the rudder's at. Trust me, it's easier. Okay. Now, definitely needs some adjusting. It's okay. That will come with time. So now the next thing we've got. Okay. Ridge off there. Now, you always want to make it undersized. That way it's watertight. Then what I do is I'll take the tube. I do that. That's going to get you through. Okay. Then we take a needle nose, whatever kind of nose. Hole might still need to be opened up. This might be one of those days I shouldn't be doing stuff. Let's open it up a little bit more. But this helps you get everything through. There we go. Okay, now the neat thing about doing it this way, and like I said, honestly, I usually don't use bulkhead fittings. Make sure you still got, it's not pinching closed, okay? Then it actually makes this completely watertight. So I don't have to seal it, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And it will, it's less weight, technically. So that's why I usually don't use bulkhead fittings. Not that I'm usually that anal about that type of stuff. And then you've got these guides for our rudder. So how these work, you've got your typical bellows. Alright, you can mount your bellow on the inside, you can mount your bellow on the outside, and how these go, you have a lip right there. Alright, and then you can do it like that. Now normally what I do, okay, is I just bring this right through the wood, through the hole, and I seal it with glue. But we're going to go ahead and do this the right way. Hopefully. I'm going to drill this hole a little bit bigger and be right back. Alright, so we've made that hole a touch bigger. Now, because it's 3D print, ply, I mean, we got a really thick frickin' transom. Definitely ain't going to break off. So I take this little aluminum jobby and I scuff it. Now, you probably should use epoxy for this. My hole there is a fairly tight hole fit, so I'm in no danger of this thing coming off. I'm going to have to probably press it in. But I'm going to take some CA glue, take off our booty. Got some booty. And we're just going to clean this off. This CA will be plenty to hold that in. But if it makes you feel better, go ahead and use epoxy. Trust me when I say that's going nowhere. Okay, that's in forever. Trust me. Alright, next one. Well, now we're going to put our rudder on. Now, like with any boat, make sure you have a perfect 90-degree angle relative to your bottom. Other than that, that's about it. One thing I do, okay, is I always double check this hex. Okay. Because I like these to be Loctited in. The odds of you ever having to take this out again, and I always tell you guys, you can use CA glue or two if you want, you don't have to use Loctite. But I always tell you guys, never ever ever Loctite these tiny little things because you'll never get them out. It's true, but I don't plan on getting this one out. Alright, make sure that's copacetic. Whilst we have it off, we're going to go ahead and tighten this up. Now, again, let's talk about throw, rudder throw. Riggers have a very, I mean, that's your throw. Full speed, okay? So, what we're going to do, we're going to have plenty of throw with that servo. Plenty of throw. So we're going to speed up our turning and put it right in the middle. So think about it like a gear ratio. The farther out here you are, sure, the longer your sweep, but the longer it takes. Closer in here, the shorter your sweep, the faster it goes. But I mean, these are fast servos anyway. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to go ahead, just when in doubt, put it in the middle. I do not build race boats. I like to build boats that are fast, but I don't go to competitions. I don't do trophy work. If I did, I'd be a lot less liberal with my epoxy. But I'm a middle-of-the-road kind of guy on speed. My stuff's usually pretty quick, but It's quick for sport boats. It's not quick for race, I'm sure. My buddy JJ Horvath and I always get in disputes because that dude knows his racing. I do not. And I'm like, yeah, my boat's fast. He goes, yeah. Not compared to his, I'm sure. So yeah, not race spec over here. The other thing we're going to do, we're going to tighten this one up. That looks like it's out of whack as well. And then you've got your camber on your rudder, right? So this is your shear pin. So if you hit something, like in my case, I'm always hitting the ski jump or something like that, this shear will break and your rudder will pop up. That's a whole lot better than having it rip the back of your boat off. That is the purpose of that. And a lot of guys, including myself, will break those. You know, say we hit a stick in the water and it breaks that shear and you want to keep running your boat, we'll go ahead and ram a normal stainless through there and forget, and then the next time you hit a dead duck or something, you're fucked. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Yada la la la. Alright. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our rudder, and that's just about it for this hardware, and then we'll move on to electronics. Be right back. Right, so we've got everything copacetic here. So next thing, we're going to go to our servo mount. Now again, a lot of times I 3D print, actually all the time, I 3D print my own servo mounts, but Uncle Joe supplied me with one, which these are, I'm sure, far better than mine. Riggers don't handle a whole lot of torque. You don't have to worry too much. Now, you'll see you've got some beveled jobbies here. So, alright. If you take your servo and put it in here, you can see, okay, so the bevel side goes down because you want those nuts, those screws to be flush. Alright. And these are to mount it to the boat if you so wish, but we're not going to do that. Now, before we get too ahead of that, same exact servos I use, I believe. Let me grab one of mine. Alright, here's an old one of mine. Pretty close. Pretty close. I think I do run 25s too, but these are 20s, my old ones. But one of the things I do is I use conformal coat, even though these are already waterproof, supposedly. Nothing's waterproof. Don't be fooled by that. And I coat the crap out of these with this. Usually 2 coats. You don't actually need to shake this. And just let it air dry, and that will waterproof you even more. Almost like a thin rubber cement. It's basically what this is. So I'm going to let this hang. Okay. Now we're going to put together our mounts. So, like I said, I say with everything, kiddies, thread lock, thread lock, thread lock, thread lock. Alright. Bad day at the zoo if you don't do this, because if these do get loose, there's really no way to tighten them up. Because this is going to be bolted, or I'm sorry, epoxied to the bottom of the hull. So this is forever. Okay. So I put thread lock into the shoes first. Bada bing. Okay. And then, so I put thread lock in these. Make sure both flat sides are going out like that, and the servo is going to go in this way, and our servo is going to go there. So while our servo is drying, I'm not going to do this side just yet because we're going to thread lock it. I'm going to take, no, I guess we can't do that just yet. You want to sand the bottom of this with 80 grit sandpaper. I always usually have a piece of 80 grit sandpaper stapled to my hull, or my hull, shoo, need to go back to bed, to my workbench. That way I can just, whenever I need to. Okay. Spray that with alcohol, clean it off, alright? So now, the throw of our servo is going to be this way. It's still wet. I'm going to spray it again, that's okay. I want to get this lined up so we can move on. Alright. Then, this is all common sense. I mean, which isn't too common as we know. Then simply, and we're going to adjust it permanently for this servo. All servos nowadays, this type, they're all the same size. It's no big deal. Where's the latch? There it is. Okay. Yeah, maybe it's not a good day to run boats. Old dumbass here can't seem to do much right. Alright. We're going to pinch these together, just like that. We're going to tighten these down. Okay. Then that is going to get mounted in there. But I'm going to put another coat of conformal on there, and we're going to scuff this area up with sandpaper because I want this to get good adhesion, and then we're going to epoxy this sucker in. Be right back. Alright, while we are waiting for our servo to dry, we're going to put in our motor. Alright? You don't need a lot of instructions for this. I'd say the trickiest part, just like a gas engine, you want your water to come in low, come out high. Alright? But make sure you've got enough room for your cooling jacket. I wish I had some 90s. I don't think I do. Let me have a look. I don't. So what we're going to do, first off, is when we did the dry fit for this, I said that we weren't going to thread lock these in. Now we are, because now it's a permanent installation. Okay. There is a flat spot on this shaft. See that? Make sure those are on the flat, or you're going to have a bad day. We're going to bring us. You don't need a thrust washer on these. Alright, that's a myth. Thrust bearing. If it's a square shaft, you do. Alright. Oops. Don't have to devil torque the hell out of them like I just did, because you'll never get that son of a bitch off. Then, we're going to, this part can be a little bit tricky because it's hard to get underneath here. Okay. But what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to figure out, you can rotate this jacket once this is bolted in. Well, usually. Jesus, maybe we can't. Good thing I checked that. But what I might do, that one's going to be easy, that one's going to be tough. I'm going to try to rotate that, get that jacket so it turns. So, let's see what our best orientation is going to be. It's probably going to be right there. Alright, so what we're going to do to preempt this is we're going to take some line. We have plenty of line, okay? I'll take about that much. And I'm going to put it on here first, because once I get this motor into position, it's going to be really tough to get that hose on, since this jacket isn't rotating. Now, I could take a channel lock, put it here, and do it that way, but I don't think it's necessary. Now, let's try. WD-40. I can get it to rotate, but let that sit for a second, see if I can free this up. Be right back. Right, so let the WD-40 sit for a second. And now she rotates. That's a good thing. So now we can get this thing in. We don't have to worry about the exact positioning because it's hard enough. We want our wires, some people like their wires to be up, some people like their wires to be down. That's really the only thing you have to be cognitive of. I like mine to be down. See, that WD-40 makes all difference in the world, and I can turn it by hand. And then you've got to find your thread pattern and stick them in. Not too terribly difficult. I'm not doing that on camera because that's a pain in the ass. I'll be right back. A couple things. One thing I forgot to mention is I usually on these electrics take a Dremel tool, the sanding drum, and put 2 divots in that bulkhead, and you'll have to reseal that. But just so I can get access to these screws a little bit easier. The other thing that you want to do as well is use washers, use Loctite. Make sure you do use a very small length screw. If you use too long of a screw, you'll jam it up into the windings of the motor and you'll short it out. Not good. So, next thing, before we tighten these up, we want to put the shaft in. Then I tighten it up. Okay? Reason being, and I tighten it across pattern if possible, because I want to, this part isn't super important. I mean, you don't have to put the shaft tube in there, but, or shaft, I mean. Sometimes this can be a painful experience because there's not a lot of room. Definitely use Loctite. Okay. Make sure your collet spins freely. It does. It doesn't bind on the motor bracket for some reason, like it's off center. No process is perfect. Okay. And we're going to do our best to tighten these up. Torque them down. But that Loctite's going to save your butt on these bottom ones, because if you can't get in there to really torque them, which I'm doing pretty good, then that Loctite at least give you some stiction. Okay, and the top ones we should have no problem. Okay. Now I could stand with cutting off a little bit of this tube, which I may. It's really a little excessive. These are all those little tweaks that you just kind of wait for the end. It's like, yeah, we can do that. Because the problem is, with that shaft tube being as long as it is there, I'm not going to be able to get that collet off if I ever need to. Got to think about those things. G. Alright. Bad day at the zoo when your motor comes loose. Promise. So I can take my Dremel disc and just slice this guy right there, which I think I'm going to do. I think we're going to yank that out and do that real quick. And I might loosen those up too. Yeah. Okay. Alright. So I think I will. I'll trim that off. This is good now. Still not real sure what I'm doing with this. I might look at some of my other motors. I might have a jacket that has angles on it, and if I do, I'm going to swap one of these out. It doesn't matter which one. Like that one can be straight up and that one can be angled, or that, but that's not going to work for me. This motor is not good for a rigger as far as the way the jacket's laid out. So I'm sure I forgot to look on my other jackets. Probably have one. And then we're going to mount our ESC, and because we're mounting our servo all the way back here, our battery's going to be here. We're going to mount our ESC right there. Run the wires underneath. Very, very simple. Need to clean this sucker off too. I got paint everywhere. Damn. So we need to fix this because I can't use those connections. So we're going to cut these right off of here. Get rid of those. Yeah, we'll be good. There's our on-off switch that I never use. This will just be in a permanent on state. I'll stick it back here, and then we'll bring our waters in. And we're going to probably have to use some extensions because I don't think that's going to fly. The CSC isn't exactly wonderful for, I guess it'll kind of work. So we also have to put our water outlet in. Now if my ESC is going to be here, we're going to bring our motor water to here. It's going to circulate, come out, go into the ESC, loop back here. We're going to put a loop in, and then we're going to bring this one out to right about there. And we're going to use double-sided tape to hold that in. It'll stay there all day with that. Not a problemo. But I do need to resolder these connections. That's not going to work for me at all. Hopefully I've got some cable. I might. I don't know. We'll see. And then our motor connections are going to go right there. But I don't want to kink my water lines, so we're definitely going to do it like that. All right. And I think once I get some of this stuff sorted out, I'm going to clean up this nasty-ass looking paint. So this particular one that I got for my buddy is set up to run 2 batteries at the same time, which we will not be doing in a rigger. Ain't got no room. There you go. Okay. This is a capacitor. It sometimes works for back discharge. When we hook up our battery, it goes pop. It still goes pop. Forward, reverse. Yep, we'll have to program it real quick. No big deal. Very, very simple. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get this mounted up with something wire-wise and figure out our course of attack. Hopefully I've got some wire here because that battery box is going here. I print my own battery boxes for these. You'll see in a minute. And that's not enough. I'm going to have more line. No way that's going to happen. And unfortunately, I only have one 4S battery. I have some 3S's that I use for robo-mower and I use for tiny boats and my daughter's boat. That's all I use 3S's for. My 4S's, I have 2. No, I guess I do have 3. But I just ordered 2 more for my buddy JJ. So, well, we might give this thing a test today. We'll see how fast we go. So, be right back. We're back. So, I ended up finding, it's alcohol, not the good stuff either, an ESC, I gotta get that off, that I had connected to this monster truck motor. Now these are the ESCs I use in pretty much every boat unless it's a 3S, which you guys know me, I don't run a ton of electrics. I've had 1,000 of the damn things, but just doesn't do it for me. Most of the stuff I do is at least a 4, usually 6, but this is 150 amp OSE, offshore electrics, and I've had the best luck in the world with these things. They just work great. I'm not going to use the dynamite. So buddy, if you want Jeffy, if you want this back, I'll gladly send it to you. I can fix it, or I can throw it in the magic drawer for a different time. The reason I picked this one is because it already had long leads on it, and I know it works, and it's a little, this is 150 amp, I think, or 180, I can't remember, but it's more than enough for this boat. And I also found a donor out of one of my other electric hydroplanes, which I don't think you guys have ever seen my electric hydroplanes, but I've got a few of them. And that one was a hydro, so it could take the straight one, so I swapped them out of that leopard jacket onto this one, so now we've got a really good setup for that. Zip strip it and all that good stuff. We'll do that later. Tidy everything up. And a lot of guys will run solid brass tube, which is lighter than using one of these. I can't be bothered. I do that with like thunderboats and gas riggers, things like that. I tend to run solid line, but in this case I just run these. Then we'll run this out to here, up, over, and out. So that means our, I'm going to put, see how it's looped? Okay, So I come in here, it loops around, kind of cools off a little bit, comes off the other side and out. And you want your water output to be, I'm probably going to put it right here behind the motor, honestly. That's probably the best spot for it. And we'll slap that in a little bit here. But I want to get this servo ready to go. So we're going to put this in. And it's going to go in the boat like this, okay? And we can go ahead and put our bar stock on. So this is what locks your servo in. And again, yes, I'm going to Loctite it. Sucks. The thing about boats, a lot of people don't realize, you guys that are into cars, which I'm into cars too. I saw my buddy in Australia yesterday. He's like, you have gas cars and nitro cars? I'm like, yeah, I don't do it very often though anymore. It's okay. It's not my thing. But the thing that's nice about boats is they have a lot fewer moving parts. But the problem is the few that do move are pretty critical. I used the wrong screws, damn it. And yeah, bad day at the zoo when your rudder servo comes out. Yeah, I have to get different screws. It's okay. These will work. So I tend to Loctite just about everything. I don't like Phillips screws anyway. I'll use my hex. And we already sanded this bottom. That ain't going anywhere. Then we want to zero it. So we're going to take our servo tester, plug it in. Okay. A lot easier to do this now. So we can hit. I'm trying to remember how to do this. There's center. Okay. So I like my old one better. Oh, that thing sucks. All right. I'm going to scruff this up. We're going to put a horn on here. Servos are cool. I got boxes and boxes of these damn servo horns. So we're going to take this one because that's what I'm going to use for this particular machine. And we're going to cut that off. We'll put this on. And you guessed it. Loctite that piggy. Like I'm too lazy to put this back in the screwdriver. Alright. And then they supplied us with this little tiny rod. I usually use 440, even in small boats, because I'm just that way. Might have to open it. Don't even have to open it up. Nice. Just like that. That's how it's going to go. We have not put on our boot yet, which might be a mistake. Curve this up, make my life a touch easier. This is like spring steel, piano wire, what have you. Then all we're going to do is epoxy it in right there. And what I'll do is I'll take one of my super fancy weights. This is a die socket that I bought for when I was about 18. I worked at a place as a die setter, 30,000 pound dies, and you had to lug with an impact these dies in. And I had to buy this, and I use it for a clamp now. Awesome. What size is that sucker? 1.5 inches. All right. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to mix up some epoxy. I'll probably put some micro balloons in it. We'll schmitz it down there and let that thing cook. It's nice and lined up. Can't really screw this up. Just right there. And then we'll be back. And we're back. So our servo is successfully glued in. We'll put our boot on later. We're going to... What'd I do with it? You know, see, this is the problem. The problem is me. Oh, there, it's in the boat. Water outlet. Okay, so I already drilled the hole. Right there. Now, some people will say, well, you drilled the hole, you have to seal it or it's going to sink. It'll float.
Oh yes. They float, Georgie. They float.
Okay, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, put it in. Then, what I do at that point, I use CA glue. Think of it as thread lock for wood. We don't use any activator, anything like that. Just like that. Now what that CA glue does, it will glue it in there. You don't even have to use the nut if you don't want to. But it also seals that wood up. And since I under-drilled it, it ain't going to get water in there anyway. You got to remember, that's barely even touching. You might get some water spray, but it's not like under the surface. You got to use your head. Stuff like this. All right. Not even going to Loctite it. It'll be all right. Actually, if the nut vibrates off, it's not going to hurt a damn thing, honestly, because this thing ain't going to go anywhere once that glue stiffens up. So we can now, with electrics, I don't know, sometimes these nozzles, these inlet and outlets are a little bit smaller. Well, they are smaller, I believe, than the gas ones. So I do tend to zip strip these, whereas gas ones I don't always. So here's another trick. What you can do. Take yourself pliers, take your zip strip, and do that. What that does, it starts your curve to make it easier to get under there. Sharper the edge, better the curve. And we're just going to do that. And see, this is why I need to take a lesson from M5. Scotty over there, he's all organized and fancy. I am not, even remotely. I do organize my shop like once or twice a week. And then I total it 3 times a week. So I'm going to overturn this a little bit. Now, we have a ton of line here. So I'm pretty happy with where this is sitting. I think we need to change it. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut it right there. Okay. Better too long than too short. We can always change it later if we want. Now, just because this tends to be the harder one, we won't have to zip strip this. And again, if you need a little bit of help coaxing it on there, take yourself some WD-40. That's glue. You don't want to use CA glue. That'd be bad. Oh, whatever. Alright. Or good old-fashioned spit works. And we can rotate these wires out of the way. No, we can't. Duh. Okay. We'll go good old-fashioned spit works. This is good. Okay. Rotate our can back. Now make sure you're not, I mean, you can have it a little bit, but don't angle it so it's hurting anything. Now, I never did get this off. Let me pop this. I use this double-side tape. Shit's insane. So, take some rubbing alcohol, or denatured. I don't use rubbing alcohol. Denatured alcohol. We're going to clean that out. We're going to take our ESC, clean that up, get any oils off. Now, the double-sided tape that I use this stuff for everything. It's clear, obviously. It's Lifego. It's waterproof, and it'll hold your kids up to the ceiling. This shit's awesome. This is actually what I use to stick my GoPros on my boats when they're running 80 miles an hour or whatever, and it's good shit. I'll put a link to it in the description. I get it off Amazon. It's not super cheap, but it does work exceptionally well. And this will hold. I've had this stuff hold so strong that if you do it wrong, when you go get your ESC out of the boat, you can break the bottom. This stuff's great. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we're going to pre-measure, and I want my tube to go under there. This is going to be our output. Okay. Now, we're going to bring our input in this side, output on this side. So I think if we cut it right about here, we should be copacetic. Okay. And if you can, I don't think we need to zip strip this, because now if you're using, Joe sent me really thick tubing here. If you're using really thick tubing, it stays on. If you're using the skinnier stuff, it's not so good. So that looks like a bit much. I don't like it. Again, better to waste a little than waste a lot. You end up wasting a lot if you cut it too short to begin with, right? There we go. Perfect. I like that. Then, from our motor, do that. Zip strips. Hard to believe we're almost done with this boat. Now, normally, typically, it takes me to build a rigger no more than 2 days. Without filming. I mean, when you film, it takes a little longer, but I mean, start to finish in the water. Usually by the end of the second day, I'm ready to rock. Very easy boats to build. If you want, okay, here's a good example. I'm just going to rant while I'm doing this here. Guy asked me yesterday, I think, on YouTube. He said, "Hey, I saw your video on the UL-19. Now, the UL-19 was a pro boat hydroplane. And that's actually the boat that kind of got me back into boats, because I was out of it for many, many years. I was into it as a kid real heavy, but then got out of it. And I'm like, man, and my neighbor behind me had a boat, a gas Rockstar. Hang on. Anyway, he had a gas Rockstar. And I'm like, oh, I'd like to get a boat again, because that's back when I lived in Ohio at the river, near the river. So I got the UL-19, blah, blah, blah. And so this dude the other day asks me, what'd you think of it? Did you like it? I said, yeah, because he wanted to get a boat. The moral of this story is, if you want, people don't run electric boats because they're slow. I mean, unless you're doing cabin cruisers and little goofy things like that. If you want a super fast boat that's much cheaper and better than an RTR meaning ready to run. Oh, that was a fail, wasn't it? Build a rigger. Seriously. You can't beat the speed on a rigger. The building is fairly straightforward, as you've seen. Like 5 pieces of wood. I mean, it's not rocket science by any stretch. And they'll smoke the shit out of any RTR there is. I'm sorry. RTRs, ready to runs, are great if you want to get into it, but I don't recommend them. Alright, we'll have to arrange our motor wires later, just to make sure our motor direction's proper. And this is exactly how I wanted these to come. So we should be able to fit under there. That's okay. And I might change this routing a little bit later. Once I get the ergonomics worked out of how I want it. You know, you're kind of shoving 50 pounds of shit in a 2-pound bag. And it's all daunting sometimes. Alright. This, do the same thing. These are indispensable. Get these off Amazon too. They're like $10 for 30 of them. It's worth every cent. Okay, there we go. Now, for our battery, what I do, there is I believe a battery tray included in the kit in the wood. I don't use those, of course, because by the time you take a piece or two of wood, usually it's 3, you got the lap piece, and then you have 2 pieces go underneath it, then you have 2 battery straps. By the time you put all that in, and you seal it, you've added a lot of weight. So I 3D print my own. And that's going to go right there. And how I do these, it's kind of a unique situation. So this is all it is. Holds a 4S battery. This is one of the junky ones, right? So we'll slide this 4S in there, and that's all it does. It just sits in there. No big deal. And this, there's no lid, nothing like that. This sits in here, and it's way below the deck, as you can see. Then what I do is I will take this canopy, and I'll put some foam right about there. So I'll line it up like this, mark it with a pencil, there, and I'll hot glue, or whatever you want to use, a piece of foam right there. Serves two purposes. That foam will push down on the battery and keep it in one spot, because these things bounce around like a nightmare, right? And you don't want that battery flying all over the place. So it keeps your battery from going forward. I make this a little oversized, so if you get a different brand of battery, you can still use this tray. The other thing is, if for some reason you wipe out so bad that your hatch tape comes off, this will float because you have foam on it. So it's kind of like I always say, guys, if you're going to add weight, then add strength, or give it another use. Okay, so I'm just going to glue this, gently glue this. Now what I mean by that is, am I going to just CA this? I have had pretty good luck with just CAing these in, because this is PLA, 3D printed, obviously, because I made it. And this is real easy. That works. The sealer, CA glues real well to it. So I'm going to scuff this up. Now, epoxy would hold it better. Agreed. Here's the problem. If I need to move this battery or change something for my center of gravity and things like that, I can easily pop this off. So we're just going to do some CA in the corners. Okay. And you will be able to pop this battery out, but it shouldn't break out. Because you're always going to have that foam pressing down. The activator will find its way. Just be patient, hold it down for a second. Perfect. Now, this should drop. This isn't the battery we're using, it's just a 4S I grabbed. And that should fit right in there. And it does. It's like that. And then you get your little piece of foam that just comes out about that far off the canopy. When you tape your hatch on, that dude's in there. And this won't break loose because you always have positive pressure. Alright, so there's that. Now, let's do our prop shaft. Then all we've got to do is finalize our electronics, do our booms, set stuff up. Be right back. What's our method for this? This is how I do it. Take your boat shaft, take your threads, and mark it at the halfway point. Doesn't have to be perfect. Say about there. Okay? Then we're going to take our drive dog, there's your prop nut, this is your drive dog, okay? And we're going to take oh, for God's sake. Where's my... We're going to take our set screw out. Don't lose it. Okay. You're going to set this here. You're going to take your pretty little prop and lock it there. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Then I'm going to slide this up. Up to about there. Okay. Then we're going to take our marker and do that. Let that cook. Take our Dremel. Use whatever you want. Use a grinding wheel, use a sanding disc, use a cutting disc like this, whatever you want. Then There's our dot. Okay, hopefully y'all can see that. All right. Now, I've done this on many videos. This isn't new. Make sure your hole is near a flat spot. Happy days. Okay. Then now, the reason we made the black mark is you don't want just enough thread for that nut. You want a little bit more, okay? And you don't want it all the way back, because if you change props and you put a prop with a lower thickness in here, you're going to run out of thread. You have to put washers on or some other hokey ass thing. And then if you make it so there's only room for the nut, you put one on with a wider throat, you won't be able to put it on at all. And that's a bad day too. So we're not going to do that. We still have to balance and sharpen that. So now, we'll just put that on there. You're set. Your drive dog is set. Now we're going to cut and measure. And we're going to put our bushing in. Remember our bushing. Okay. Then we're going to take our calipers, wherever the hell I put them. You have to use calipers for this. Measure it any way you want to. So we're going to take this dimension. Make sure you're all the way seated, not collet. Take this dimension. And then we're going to subtract that much. Hopefully you can see that. Okay? So that dimension, and I subtracted a little bit more than the width of the shaft. And that is where we're cutting it. Because when you go ahead and torsion these, when you fire your boat up and you go a-running, you this will pull like this, like a spring, if you will. So we're going to cut it right there. All right. And if you don't have any gap there, on an electric, you're going to screw up your motor. On a gas, you're going to pull the shaft out. So, got to have a gap. Then I go over to the grinding wheel and I take that burr off. Hang on. Pretty. Burr is gone. Put our bushing back on. Don't lose that. Okay. That's about how much you want left right there. Then we can torque this down, which we're not going to right now, because I still have to grease it and all that stuff. Okay? Easy peasy. Now, what's next? Suppose we'll do the receiver, and we're going to make sure that our motor is going the right direction. So I will torque this down a little bit. And after that, I think we're calling it a day. And tomorrow, we'll tidy everything up, do the sponsons. We'll just tighten it up a little bit, because we're not going to be running this big. Dry, obviously. So here's your steering servo. Where do we want to put our radio? Well, your radio, in my case, is going to go right here, I think. And I think I've got enough wire. I don't need to use the extension that Joe so graciously supplied. So let me get my radio set up first. My receiver bound. I'm not going to do a video on that because I use a different radio than most people. I use a Radio Link, and it's fairly straightforward on how you bind them. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, so now we're going to plug this into Axis, Robot World. channel 1. Make sure your trims are all zeroed out. Okay? And they are. Okay? Kind of bent it a little bit. There we go. Okay. Then, I don't love using set screws for these, so I actually use a cut down metric bolt. And then, with your steering servo centered, I think the threads are gooey. Grab a different screw. I'll just put the set screw back in, and I'll put a real screw in there later, because this is something I tend to adjust a lot, and I don't like them little set screws. Okay. Don't have to torque the hell out of it. Okay. And if you want to, you can go ahead and trim this. Okay. Let's make sure our steering's right. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect our battery, and we're going to connect our ESC, because our ESC has a BEC in it, battery eliminator circuit. Okay. Now I'm going to make sure my motor leads are spread apart, because I haven't sealed anything off yet, and I don't want anything sparking. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in a battery. My 4S's are all in my starters. So this battery's probably half dead anyway. And then we're just going to do this to test our rotation. Now, just like a gas boat, we should be turning, if you're facing this way, counterclockwise. Okay? And we're going to set up our failsafe and our endpoint adjustment on our steering. And then I'm going to tape those up off camera. Okay. I use 6mm bullet connectors on my batteries. I don't use XT90s. I don't use those other weird things. Okay. You'll probably hear a spark. It's okay. Okay. What that means is we need to calibrate our ESC. So first off, one thing I did not check was to see if my radio, got to make sure my reverse is not on. Good thing I checked. Let's try it again. Okay, so we're going to try calibrating. We're going to squeeze our trigger all the way in. Okay, there we go. All right, so to calibrate most ESCs, really, that might be a low voltage. Let's find out. Okay. So usually what you'll do is you'll squeeze your trigger all the way in. You'll hear it beep 4 times because it's a 4S in this case. Then we let the trigger out. That calibrates it. So I'm going to put my finger on here. It's going the wrong way. All right. So what we need to do, we're going to disconnect this. We're going to swap any 2 of these leads, because this is a 3-phase system. Okay. Done. Now it's going to go the right way. This battery's dead. Sorry. Oh, tricky way of. Okay, so now we don't want to run it too much because there's no grease in here. So what I'm going to do now, I can't remember if my failsafe is set or not. we're going to make it go really slow, and I'm going to turn off transmitter. It was not set. There you go. Alright, so what we're going to do to avoid that in the future with my particular radio, this is not how it works with all of them. Mine I just set easily from the radio. So go in here, fail safe, throttle, that's why. Done. Okay, now I should be able to plug this back in. Now, the reason it took off, okay, is because I'm using a channel that was for one of my gas boats, and my throttle was reversed and my failsafe was negative 122, because for a gas engine, you want it to go in reverse. Well, this thing kicked off in reverse full speed, so I want to go to dead neutral. Too lazy to charge this battery. Okay. Now we should be able to do this. Good. Now that noise you're hearing, like, is because everything's loose and there's no grease in there. That's enough. So we're aware to the world. Now all we have to do is balloon this guy. Now maybe I will use that extension because I don't have enough cable to do my balloon trick. Let me get my stuff together. I'll show you that, and we're going to call it a day. This isn't the one Joe supplied, but that's okay. I couldn't find it. Imagine that. Because of my pig pen of a workshop. So I'm going to put a little... This is what I use for a servo keeper. So these things don't come disconnected. Another bad day at the zoo. Weakest point in the chain. So I just CA it, and if I ever need to get this apart, I just take a razor blade, go like that. Fine. But this will keep any vibration from knocking it loose. And then we're just going to put it along here, through here, and we'll tidy it up later. Channel 1 is steering. Channel 2, throttle. Now, how I do this. Now, so we set up our fail-safe, so if the boat goes out of range or your radio dies or whatever, it just goes to neutral. It just dies. This is an electric, so you can do that. You don't want it going in reverse. A gas engine, you want it to go in reverse because that kills the throttle. It totally shoots everything to hell. Hence why it took off on me there for a second. Now, this is what I do just from experience. I take a piece of electrical tape. Okay, antenna in the same direction. I push down on these and I tape them, because if your receiver comes loose and starts bouncing around, you could get disconnected, and that sucks. Now on a gas boat it really sucks, but on one of these it still sucks. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a balloon, like ya. Alright, give it a little stretchy. And I'm going to cut the end off. Just like that. You don't even have to cut the end off, but I didn't feel like fighting it. Then, that's it. Just like that. Then, we take 2 zip strips. Now, I remember last summer, or maybe it was the first summer I lived here 2 years ago, that I had just got done building a rigger. And was it an R4? It wasn't an R4, but it was the R4 I make. So I used to make an R4 out of ZippKits nitro rigger. I'd buy the nitro kit, and I just wouldn't put a nitro engine in it. I'd set it up as a 4S. And it was a sweet looking boat. I'll put a picture of it up here. A beautiful boat, beautiful build, beautiful paint job. It just really came out. And I just, maiden voyage, man. I just was not paying attention. And I hit the ski jump. Well, I live on a ski lake, in case you don't know. And my cousins are competition world champion frickin' water skiers, so they built this lake many years ago. And anyway, long story longer, I hit this fucking ski jump. Right, I hit the side of it with this rigger doing like 65, 70. 3-pound boat going that fast. jump's going to win. And to the point where the whole tub sunk. I mean, I had to go snorkeling for the guts. And what was the moral of this story is, even though I had to go snorkeling for the guts, my receiver still worked because I did a double tie like this. You can do triple if you really want to, but I think that's enough. And I've never had one fail from doing this method. So we can put this receiver anywhere we want now that we have the extension in. So I think I'm just going to put it up front. Now how I mount these, yet again, I take some electrical tape. Okay. And I make sure the end ends on the bottom. Because electrical tape is not waterproof. At least not to my knowledge. Take some of this, get some of the sawdust that's just inevitably back here. Okay. Then we're going to take some of our supersonic psycho tape. And the reason I put that electrical tape on the end, on the bottom, is when I put this over it, it's going to keep that tape from unwrapping. The reason the tape is on the balloon is because nothing sticks to silicone worth a shit, okay? So it's actually going to stick more to the tape than it is to the actual balloon. Then we're going to take this guy, and you can double balloon them too, if you really want to get crazy with it. All right, and I'm just going to goo him up right there. Now, do you need to put in an antenna tube and bring it out? You don't. On a wood boat, on a lake the size of mine, I have never really had an issue with just tucking it in there. Now, fiberglass, different devil. Fiberglass hull, you know, your frequencies aren't as good. But even then, we're going to tuck this wire down there. I should have ran that neater, but that's okay. Then I'm going to tape with electrical tape. I'm going to tape up these connections. This is the resistor pack to that ESC. I'm going to move that guy over here. We'll probably stick him right there with some more supersonic tape. I'm telling you, this stuff is strong, man. And it actually comes off really easy. Like if you needed to get it off of stuff, you can roll it like with your thumb, and it comes off okay, but don't pull it. Pulling it don't work. There's our capacitor pack. Okay, and then I'm going to simply tape, or you could, the smart way to do it, and I think I'm out, what I usually do is I'll take heat shrink tubing, and I'll put it over here, but it has to be a big piece, and then hook these together, and then slide it over, then heat it, and do it that way. It looks a lot better. Axle, but I'll see if I've got some. It's not a big deal if we don't. And this boat is almost totally done. So tomorrow, what do we have to do? We have to set our throw on the rudder down to 1/4 of an inch each way, which is like 10%, 15%. Then we need to set our booms. That's real easy to do. And then throw it in the water. Grease the prop, obviously. This screw that you're seeing down here, that was a failed attempt at getting one into the motor. There we go. I also put the boot on. Okay. If you have a problem getting the boot onto that metal thing, put a little bit of WD-40 on it, slide it right over there, pops right on. Not a big deal. And we got to find our foam to keep our battery down. And there we go. Bob's your uncle. Or Joe's your uncle. Uncle Joe. All right. So there she is, kids. 98% done. And we got to set our strut with the strut gauge. So you got to do that. We got to tighten that up. Got to grease our shaft. I'll check the prop, but I think it's pretty close to being ready to go. Yeah, that's about it. And maybe charge one of these. My batteries all suck. My 4S batteries really suck because I abuse them in my my starters. I abuse the hell out of them. As you can see, it's a little puffy, little ugly. It won't even fit in here. But JJ, I ordered some. He has an online shop, my buddy. Yeah, it'll still fit in here. You could always fit it this way too if you needed to in a pinch. But to do the maiden, we might wait for the new batteries because I want to really see this thing go. So she's turned out pretty nice. So until tomorrow, maybe even later on today, we'll see how bored I get. Keep dry side up, kids. Bye.
Relax, don't do it when you wanna go to it.